The game trophy goes to this man hiding somewhere right there, Dr. Henry Frazier.
Arkansas dominates early. They dominated all night. The Razorbacks rout UAPB 70-0.
On the scenes. Top plays now. Here we go. Number 5. McNeese' Bugsy Silvera. Nice. First of All-American name, All-American interception.
All-American name, All-American interception.
Oh, that's beautiful. Well, nice.
All right. So in the very first edition of CIAA Best Week Ever, and first of all, if you're not at least over 30 years old, you're not even going to know what I'm talking about. But when we were coming up, when VH1 and MTV were actually still entertaining and popular, and they had real shows outside of like just reality shows like Love and Hip Hop, and they actually showed videos and all these kinds of things. They had actual programming, right? And one program that they had that was very popular at the time was called Best Week Ever, where they would have all these celebrities and commentators come on, and they would talk about different celebrities that had a very good week because something positive went in their career or whatever the case may be. And so it came to me that I'm going to steal this idea and implement it onto HBCUs. And so what we have here is the HBCU Best Week Ever. And this is something that I'm going to try to do every week of the football season. And how it's going to go is the best week ever is going to be determined by conference. There's 4 conferences, so each conference is going to have a varying level of who had the best and who had the worst week. So, and I'm going to explain why the decision was made in each situation, right? And so for this week, I have to say that the CIAA had the best week ever. Why do I say that? Well, it's very simple. We had 3 matchups with the SEAC to determine who was the number 1 D2 football conference for this season, and it was a complete and utter domination. Virginia Union kicked Kentucky State's teeth in. Virginia State bullied Benedict. And Johnson C. Smith little brother Tuskegee. 3 games, 3 wins. Total score of 113-27. On top of that, the other teams that did play, because we did have some conference matchups, we had Elizabeth City versus Shaw. And Shaw won that game, which people thought, because in the preseason rankings, they had Shaw above Elizabeth City, who Elizabeth City was picked to finish second last. And that's how that played out. We also had Bluefield versus Winston-Salem State, and that game played out how that game was supposed to play out. So in addition to the CIAA dominating the SEAC, the teams that were supposed to win within the conference won, and the teams that were supposed to lose lost. So things are going according to plan in the CIAA. So the CIAA had the best week ever this week. Second, I went with the MEAC. And the reason I went with the MEAC was because the MEAC had some very important and impressive out-of-conference wins this week. Now, we saw Norfolk State. They caught a beatdown. But, hey, it happens. But Morgan State beat Hampton in the HBCU matchup, which was also out of conference, a MEAC versus CIAA matchup. And the MEAC needed that win. Morgan State needed that win, and they got the win. Then we had Delaware State, who has been struggling over the last few years. But they went out there, and they beat Sacred Heart in a non-conference matchup. That's a huge win for Delaware State and another huge win for the MEAC. Then We had now South Carolina State. They did lose. They did. However, they played hard, they played tough, and they had an opportunity to win the game. And so when you look at FAMU and their two matchups versus the MEAC, you know, the demise of the MEAC is greatly overstated, is what I'll say. Then, of course, on top of that, we had North Carolina Central get a win against the SWAC and beat Alabama State. So the 6-team MEAC was able to rack up 3 non-conference wins. Very important. And honestly, I'm a CIAA guy, right? But if South Carolina State would have won, then I would have had to have put MEAC number 1. But since South Carolina State did not win, I put them number 2. So number 3, we do have the SWAC. And, you know, outside of FAMU, it was a tough weekend for the SWAC. I think it was, what was the school? Prairie View. They lost in a shocking manner. They were dominated from beginning to end. Grambling lost. Who else was it? Southern lost to McNeese State. It was 7-7 for the longest, and they had the fumble. I mean, they had the mishap, the high snap on special teams, and you know that was pretty much the end of that one. We know what happened to Pine Bluff against Arkansas. That we just gonna pretend like that didn't even happen. We won't need to talk about that. Then we also saw Jackson State versus Louisiana. Yeah. So yeah, the SWAC had a rough time, had a rough go of it. They did, outside of FAMU. But coming in last, the HBCU that had the worst week, obviously, the SEAC. Outscored 27-113 by the CIAA. Tuskegee lost in Alabama. Kentucky State got demolished in Kentucky. Benedict was dominated in a neutral site. They looked terrible. They looked like a bottom feeder in their own conference. Fort Valley State gave up, 6 touchdowns to Clark? You know, when you put all that together, they had the worst week. But let me know what you think about this. Do you agree? CIAA 1, MEAC 2, SWAC 3, SEAC 4? Let me know.